If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
The
YouTube.
Israeli military launched an intense aerial bombardment on the Gaza Strip over the weekend, employing missiles fired from warplanes and artillery. Israeli officials have said the barrage came as they are deliberating how to conduct a ground invasion of Gaza with the aim of removing Hamas from power, and as diplomats conducted back-channel negotiations aimed at freeing some of the 229 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Now rebranded as X, the site formerly known as Twitter has experienced a surge in racist, anti-Semitic, and other hateful speech. Under Elon Musk's watch, millions of people have been exposed to misinformation about climate change and other breaking and political news. Foreign government and operatives from Russia to China to Hamas have spread divisive propaganda with little or no interference or regulation by the site. House Speaker Mike Johnson, in his first national television interview since winning the Speaker's gavel, offered condolences to the victims of the mass killing that occurred last week in Lewiston, Maine. The end of the day, the problem is the human heart, Johnson said. It's not guns, it's not the weapons. At the end of the day, we have to protect the right of the citizens to protect themselves, and that's the Second Amendment. And that's why our party stands so strongly for that. Those are the words of the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Donald Trump and 3 of his adult children are scheduled to testify between November 1st and November 6th in the $250 million civil fraud case that alleges years of financial misconduct by the Trump Organization and those who run it. The announcement of the Trump family's upcoming courtroom appearances was made last week after the New York Supreme Court Justice ruled that Ivanka Trump, who is no longer a named defendant in the case, may be called by attorneys from the office of New York Attorney General Letitia James to testify under subpoena. Ivanka Trump and her legal team are fighting to quash that subpoena. And Congress member Dean Phillips, a Democrat from Minnesota, has announced a long-shot primary challenge to President Joe Biden in the 2024 presidential election. The 3-term congressman and business owner argues that Biden has an electability problem and should pass the torch to a younger fellow Democrat. Now, House Democrats say they are simply battled by their colleagues a decision to challenge a sitting president that has scored lots of points and has been widely successful in his first term. The mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, blamed a communication failure for a botched investigation that kept a family from learning that their missing son and father had been killed by a Jackson police car and buried in a pauper's field. The mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, made his first public comments last week about the case in his annual State of the City speech, admitting mistakes and promising changes, but also saying there were no indications of police misconduct or malicious intent against the deceased Dexter Wade or his family. The donor backlash at the University of Pennsylvania and uproar at Harvard University over Israel and Palestine highlight how big donations often come with demands. Now, these are big donations to major universities, come with demands for changes to university policy and politics. The backlash has raised questions about the influence big donors wield and pressure donors may exert over leadership, hiring decisions, and academic affairs. This is Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in Real Time, and you know what we do in this hour. This is the hour where we go deep, where we dig behind the headlines, and we bring you those stories that make big headlines and that have big impact. These are the stories that have people talking. And today I'm super excited to have a recurring guest or returning guest on the show. Her name is Nekima Levy Armstrong. She is a civil rights attorney. She's the former president of Black Lives Matter, the chapter in Minneapolis. She was very, very involved with a lot of the protests after the murder of George Floyd. In fact, she was the activist that actually alerted the police chief in Minneapolis about how its department was providing misinformation and misleading information about how George Floyd was murdered and how he was treated by police officers on the afternoon and evening when he was arrested. She now has a new nonprofit that she has started called Moms for Liberation. And as the founder of this organization and one of its lead advocates, she is on a mission to counter the organizations and the parents that we have seen showing up to school board meetings demanding that books be banned. You probably have heard a lot about the organization called Moms for Liberty. This is predominantly a GOP right-wing, conservative, mostly white organization of moms who've been at the forefront of banning books from some of this country's most celebrated authors, including classics. Attorney Nekima Levy Armstrong says that by doing so, these women, these activists, these school boards who they are influencing, that they are erasing a substantial part of Black history and of history that is critical to our children. We're going to talk to Nekima about what inspired her to start the organization Moms for Liberation, what she hopes to accomplish, and what some of her challenges have been. Stay with us. This is an interesting conversation about book bans and what we all can do to fight back and to ensure that the history of African Americans and other marginalized people in this nation are not erased from the shelves of libraries and schools throughout this country. When we come forward, more of KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and this is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time. And in this hour, I am talking to civil rights attorney Nekima Levy Armstrong. She is an activist extraordinaire, was on the front line after George Floyd was murdered in Minnesota, really pushing for changes in that city with respect to its police department, with respect to the leadership, even on city council. She now has decided that in addition to being an advocate around issues related to police brutality, she wanted to do something about the book bans that we have seen throughout this country. We've seen organizations like Moms for Liberty and others who have made it their goal, their aim, their purpose to cause school districts around this country to ban books that they find offensive. She just was written up in a really great feature in Essence Magazine talking about her new organization, Moms for Liberation. And in that article, some startling statistics that I think we need to talk about. In the article, it says book challenges almost doubled from 2021 to 2022. And according to PEN America, there were 3,362 instances of books being banned during the 22-23 school year. 40% of banned books happened courtesy of Florida, although Texas, Missouri, Utah, and South Carolina are also leading the way to ban books. Thank you so much, Nekima, for joining me today. Thank you for the work you're doing with Moms for Liberation. I have so many questions I want to ask you about this new organization. Whenever there's a need, I know activists and advocates like you step in to fill that void. But why did you start? What was the catalyst for you starting Moms for Liberation?
Well, there were quite a few reasons. One, thank you for having me on the show. But I am a children's book author. I wrote a book called J is for Justice. It is a picture book for children, and it's focused on teaching them how to use their voices in the face of injustices and adversity. And that book stemmed from my experience here on the front lines in Minneapolis, fighting for police accountability, but bringing my youngest child along, who's now 6. And she was out there literally since she was in the womb, being a part of the movement. And so through that experience, I thought about other children who maybe didn't have the language or the words for what they were seeing on television or even when they were attending protests. And so it's actually been a powerful vehicle to get into schools, to chant with kids, to read the story to kids. So I understand the power and the importance of diverse representation when it comes to authors, particularly Black authors and other authors of color, being able to share their creativity and their thoughts around issues that matter in our society. And so as I learned about this phenomenon of book banning and I started to dig more deeply into it, I realized that it's part of a concerted effort to push back against some of the racial justice gains that many of us saw beginning in 2020, with the aftermath of George Floyd being killed. And there are several right-wing organizations that have a political motivation behind what they're doing, this push for censorship, this move to silence our voices, and they're expecting us to not stand up and fight back. And of course, the activist in me refuses to sit on the sidelines as this is going on.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I love that, one, you are a children's book author. As a mom, I can imagine that, this is so not just special to you as a mother, but to your daughter. And as you're telling that story of your daughter being out on the front lines of protest while in the womb, I'm thinking about our Vice President Kamala Harris. She often tells the story of how her mom, who was an activist in Berkeley in the 60s and 70s, how she and her younger sister were often, right there on the front lines with her mother. And we know, what that meant for now our vice president, who went to law school, who became a prosecuting attorney, became an attorney general, became a senator, and now the vice president of the United States. So your daughter is
right.
First woman, first African American, first Southeast Asian. Your daughter is getting an incredible lesson and activism and advocacy being out there with you. So kudos to you again for starting this organization. But tell us, Nekima, some of the books, because I think when people think about book bans, some people might think, well, this is a great service that these mothers, perhaps that have been the most vocal about these bans, are banning maybe pornography or, other kinds of books that perhaps parents wouldn't want their kids to read. You and I know that's not the case. So, educate me and my listeners on, what are the titles of some of these books that have been banned?
Well, I'll share at least a couple of key titles that were a shock to me. The book by Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me, which was almost like a love letter, to his son, talking about racism, discrimination. That book was banned. He actually wound up showing up to a school board meeting, I believe in South Carolina, where this happened. An AP teacher had introduced the book into the classroom, and some white students complained and said that the book made them feel guilty or ashamed about being white. And that was enough for the teacher to be told that she could not use that book in an advanced placement class. And then the book Hair Love is another. It's a children's picture book, which I love so much. When I think about the positive representation of Black hair in that book and the powerful messages that it specifically sends to Black girls around embracing their natural hair and loving who they are, who would think that a book like that would be dangerous enough to ban? Right? So we have to understand that this is not happening in a vacuum. This is a part of what has happened historically with regard to suppressing our rights to read what we want to read, even to learn how to read, if we want to take it all the way back to the days of slavery. But to understand that, again, this is a part of a concerted effort to push back against the gains that have been made. We've seen it with attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've seen it through the recent Supreme Court decision overturning affirmative action. So this is all interconnected and interrelated. And it's not just about the books, it's also very political. So if you look at one of the leading right-wing organizations that's pushing this movement, it's a group called Moms for Liberty. And they were founded just over 2 years ago. And they have over 200 chapters around the country. Wow. They have also been supporting political candidates. And from my understanding, roughly 30% of the candidates that they endorse actually got elected. And they've had a platform for people like Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and other very conservative politicians to speak, the vitriol that we know causes a lot of harm within our communities.
So it's interesting that you said, with respect to Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, that it was being taught in this advanced placement class. Those are typically 11th and 12th graders, so we're not talking about kindergartners or first graders. That the white students said that the content of that book made them uncomfortable or made them feel ashamed to be white. It seems like there are these code words now, Nekima, that white people have taught each other and have passed on to their children, and they're triggering words. So if you say something like, this DEI workshop makes me uncomfortable, or the language used by a professor makes me uncomfortable, or the contents even of a book makes me uncomfortable, makes me feel ashamed of being white, that's all you need to say. Those kind of coded words become enough to put into action either the banning of the book or the discipline, a teacher facing some kind of disciplinary action. When did we first start to hear that language? Because I'm just trying to think back to myself being in school, being in college, being in law school. I don't remember sitting in classrooms with white students, and I went to predominantly white college and law school. White students using that language about being uncomfortable because it was a lesson on slavery, or it was a lesson being taught about, Black people in the civil rights movement. Do you have any reference for when they started using this language about comfort level?
I'm sure that there's always been an undercurrent of white people, white children expressing discomfort when Black folks are unapologetic and outspoken about the issues that we have experienced. I mean, even thinking back to Dr. King, right? And that's some of the backlash that he received for simply speaking the truth and demanding justice for our community. So I believe that undercurrent has always been there. It shows up in different ways. But now what we're dealing with, you know, at least over the last couple of years, is, I guess, a more blatant expression of discomfort of white people and white young folks, you know, deciding to push back against this focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and against the truth about history itself.
Right.
Right. If we look at what's happened historically, how can you argue with the truth? It's in black and white in terms of the harms that were done to us because of the color of our skin.
But we do see, Nekima, in states like Florida, efforts to really rewrite what we have historically known as the truth, like this notion that when slavery is being taught in Florida, they should talk about the positives of slavery, not just the negatives. You know, this whole notion that somehow slaves were learning useful skills, that they were in some kind of like job training program. And when they were finally free, they could go out and be locksmiths and welders and cooks and other things that, you know, made them marketable in, you know, the broader marketplace. So we have seen efforts to distort the truth in ways that we know are particularly harmful. I do want to ask you about Moms for Liberty. You're right. Very powerful group, not just banning books, but actually giving a platform to very extremists, politicians, the MAGA politicians, let's call them that, and seeing those politicians vie and compete for the endorsement of these mostly women. What, from your understanding of Moms for Liberty, what has made them so effective? Because, you know, when you think about these school board meetings, I can remember back, you know, after George Floyd's murder, when we started to see the backlash, we would see news reports of these very contentious school board meetings where you'd have them packed with a lot of these conservative activists, you know, a lot of shouting and screaming and, you know, very contentious meetings. Has that been their strategy, you know, one of intimidation?
Well, I think part of how they came to quote unquote prominence, right, in some circles is how they see them. It started actually during COVID-19 when, you know, you saw schools taking drastic actions in order to protect children, in order to protect teachers. And they started pushing back, you know, at that point because they didn't agree. And then after that, they started to focus on I think one of their slogans is like, we don't co-parent with the government, right? And so that is one way that they started to build momentum, talking about big government and government's overreach and telling parents what they could and could not do. And then that opened the door to them beginning this process of pushing for book bans. But we have to remember, even shortly before that, there was all of these notions around critical race theory, and politicians like DeSantis talking about critical race theory, even though we know critical race theory is not taught in K through 12 education. It's more of the propaganda that is being used to try to keep, I would argue, the influence of Donald Trump alive and well through any of our systems. And so it's sad to watch this unfold.
So when you think about these groups like Moms for Liberty, other than showing up at these school board meetings, other than organizing, what other strategies have they used to be effective? Because I can imagine that the typical parent that shows up at a school board meeting or at a superintendent's office saying, I don't like this book, I want it banned, that's not in and of itself going to cause that school, you know, to take action. So why have they been so effective?
Well, I think white privilege has played a huge role in terms of their ability to even garner so much media attention for what they're doing. They also are very well funded. And that is, you know, a part of how they're able to organize, mobilize folks have different events and like I said, to set up these chapters in different places around the country. Most recently, within the last week or so, we even saw Scholastic Books make a decision to create a focus on diverse books in a separate category because of the push for book bans. It's not a positive thing, it's a negative thing in the sense of them caving to the pressure surrounding book bans and deciding to set aside books by diverse authors, LGBTQ authors, et cetera. Whereas when we were in school, the books that they had available were all out together at once.
Right.
So we're even seeing a major company like Scholastic cave to this pressure. Something our community needs to pay attention to. It's not just a fringe issue. When you have that kind of political power, we have to understand what's at stake for us in 2024 as a people.
When we come forward, I want to talk about how your new organization, your newfound organization, Moms for Liberation, is taking on these groups, these well-funded, well-organized groups like Moms for Liberty. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though?
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views. new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
We are back. And in this hour, I'm talking to Nekima Levy Armstrong. She's a civil rights attorney. She's an activist and an advocate. She is also the founder of a new organization called Moms for Liberation. And Nekima's on a mission. She's on a mission to fight back those very conservative, GOP-backed, and really well-funded, well-organized groups that have been going around this country getting books banned. And Nekima made an excellent point in the last segment about these groups, that they are more than just groups of moms who care about what happens in their kids' schools. These women, predominantly women who are part of these organizations, have lots of political ties. They have a political agenda. Many of them are associated or affiliated with Christian evangelics. I'm looking at one of them, a Moms for Liberty chair. This woman had previously fought a library for having an adaptation of the Anne Frank diary. And she was on a podcast really making anti-Semitic comments, saying that Jewish people were tyrants, how Jewish people had forsaken God, and, really stating some views that, again, go beyond what you would think in terms of a parent who's just concerned about what her child reads, which is why the organization that Nekima has started, Moms for Liberation, is so important. So Nekima, we were talking about Scholastic, one of the biggest, book providers to schools in the country, having caved in to the pressure from some of these organizations like Moms for Liberty, and now creating a whole category. And is that being done, this diverse book category, to send a message to teachers and to parents and to students that if you pick one of these books out of this so-called diverse category, that it may contain language that you find offensive? What's the purpose of this new group category, this new category of books?
It's honestly hard to know what their ultimate purpose is, other than sending a signal that we don't want to come under the ire of Moms for Liberty and these other groups who are pushing back. We want to continue coming in the schools, selling our books, and not have the courage to stand up for diverse authors who might be LGBTQIA and female authors. So I think it's really a shame, and it's a slap in the face to our community, because many of us, we've sent our kids with our last pocket change over the years, to go purchase books during the Scholastic book fairs. And for them to not engage the Black community about this, or other communities of color, and to move forward, almost in solidarity with what Moms for Liberty and other groups are doing, I think it is really a terrible reflection on their company at this time. So we are going to be pushing back and mobilizing people to try to get Scholastic Books' attention regarding this particular decision.
And we're going to talk a lot about how your organization, your new organization, Moms for Liberation, is fighting back against these ultra-conservative groups like Moms for Liberty. But just do a simple Google search of Moms for Liberty. And, of course, you get the background that they are ultra-conservative group trying to ban books that they find offensive, books that, as you said, have content or perhaps even written by members of the LGBTQ community, books that deal with issues of race or racism. But these women are incredibly organized around politics and getting candidates elected, particularly school board candidates. They do voter guides where they are telling people in local communities who they should vote for, candidates that they believe will support their very conservative agenda. So again, this isn't just a bunch of moms showing up at school board meetings. These are very organized, well-funded, and potentially very powerful organizations or groups of women that are influencing who gets elected at the local level and all the way up to the presidential level. So talk to us, Nekima, about Moms for Liberation and how a group like yours that is designed to counter the efforts of groups like Moms for Liberty, what are some of the strategies that you're using?
It's still early, I would say, in our development as an organization. And we are actually an extension of an organization that I run called the Wayfinder Foundation, which focuses on Black and Brown women amplifying their voices and their leadership skills, who are engaging in social justice activism within their communities. And so when I think about our mission, I think that it's important for us to provide proper education and information to people so that they will begin to take this seriously. Because with so many competing narratives out there, with so much going on in the world, it's easy to think, oh, book bans, that's, at the bottom of my list of priorities, until folks begin to understand that, again, this is very much so connected to a broader political agenda and all of the power and the platforms that are interconnected into their mission. And so I was actually attending the annual conference of School Board Partners, which is a national organization that trains school board members around the country. And I was on a panel, and during my panel discussion, we were talking about, someone had asked a question about, why is this even important, with regard to Moms for Liberty? Why should we even give them their attention? And then I responded, by saying this is important and here's why. This is a direct attack on our civil liberties, our freedoms, and attempts to silence our voices. And we have to begin to not only pay attention, but we have to fight back. And then I mentioned that I was toying with the idea of launching Moms for Liberation, and the crowd broke out into applause. Dr. David Johns, who's a well-known activist and organizer, blurted out, do it now. So literally from the stage at School Board Partners National Conference in New Orleans, I opened my phone and launched the Instagram page. And so it was such an exciting moment, because many of the people who joined the page in that moment are sitting school board members from around the country. So they made up the first group of people who decided to get dialed into these issues. So that was really important. Additionally, we were also thinking about this notion of empowering school board members, and specifically empowering Black and Brown women and mothers who may want to run for school board, because I feel we're the experts. Yes. We've had to deal with the brunt of any issues within the public school system, any inefficiencies, any discrimination. And so I actually reached out to School Board Partners earlier this year about partnering with us on a fellowship opportunity. And that fellowship opportunity is actually going on right now. It includes 30 Black and Brown women from around the country who are being mentored, who are being given training, information and opportunities, and who are being encouraged to run for school board on an anti-racism platform so that they can help counter some of these false and racist narratives and actions that groups like Moms for Liberty and other right-wing organizations are taking. And so I hope that we'll be able to influence Black and Brown mothers making a decision to take on the mantle of leadership within their school systems.
I'm so glad that you had the vision and the foresight to partner with that organization to provide those 30 women with that opportunity because, again, going back to Moms for Liberty, since its formation in Florida, just 2021, so we're talking just 2 years ago, they have become the vanguard of a conservative movement that's pushed to roll back school diversity and equity initiatives. So not just banning books, but diversity and equity initiatives prohibit classroom discussions of topics on gender, sexuality, and race. And just this summer, Donald Trump and other GOP presidential candidates went to Philadelphia for their second national summit. And at their summit, they're doing exactly what you just said. They're training school board candidates on fundraising, on media strategy, on, how to flip a school board. And once that school board is flipped, how to get that school board to take action consistent with their agenda. So in 2 years, these women have become so powerful that every GOP candidate running for president showed up at their summit. And you and I know that's huge. I mean, NAACP, legacy civil rights organizations, you have to fight to get, the leading candidates running for president at your convention. And we know for sure they weren't there in year 2. So in year 2 of this summit for Moms for Liberty, they have so much power. And what it says to me is what we say as a cliche is that all politics are local. They took that cliche, turned it on its head, and starting at the ground level, at the local level, have built now an organization that has power from the school board to the White House. And your efforts partnering to teach Black and brown women how to do the exact same thing, so needed. And I'm glad you started when you did. I hope you get the support that you deserve because in some ways we're late. I mean, they got a 2-year head start. They got a 2-year funding, head start, and we got some catch up to do. When we come forward, I want to talk about, hold that thought, because when we come forward, I'll let you respond to that. And I also want to talk about Houston, because some really interesting things are happening in the Houston school district that fit into the narrative that we're seeing played out by some of these other schools in Texas, other districts in Texas and Missouri, in South Carolina and Florida. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Your bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nekima Levy, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We are back, and we're talking to one of the country's most esteemed civil rights lawyers who has thrown her hat into the arena to take on groups like Moms for Liberty to fight back against these parent-driven organizations who are on a mission to ban books in schools, to prevent conversations around sexuality, gender, and race in schools. And I just want to read you again something just so stunning. In just 2 years, this group, Moms for Liberty, have become so powerful. They, as I said earlier, they back candidates, they make recommendations for candidates, and the Brookings Institute has done some research on them, the Brown Center on Education Policy at the Brookings Institute, and they determined that candidates that they back have a higher chance of winning in more conservative parts of the country. So in 2 years, they have such power that they can influence the election of candidates. So Nekima, again, I'm just sitting here almost flabbergasted, like, what were we doing? These women were obviously taking advantage of COVID. Maybe we were making sourdough bread or, figuring out how to make fancy food at home, but these women were working during COVID.
Well, we were in survival mode. If you think about what happened over the last 2 years, we not only had to deal with the devastating effects of COVID-19, trying to protect the most vulnerable people in our community, but also fighting for justice for George Floyd in Minneapolis and around the globe. So I feel that we were in survival mode during that time, keeping our heads above water, while these women and all of their privilege and all of their might are literally building an army, right, to try to take down our school system, to try to attack our libraries, to try to attack the very gains that we've made, in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion and racial justice. So they have been very intentional and methodical over those last 2 years. And the sad part is that many of us are still asleep at the wheel when it comes to understanding the power that these women hold, as well as the threat that they hold to our democracy and to our community as a whole.
Yeah, they obviously, like you said, we're building a little army. They are taking a lot of credit for getting school board members elected in conservative parts of the country. They basically had the presidential candidates for the GOP come out and do a dog and pony show to try to get their endorsement as well. I know you said you have 30 Black and brown women partnering now, going through this training program. As you envision this organization that you've started, Moms for Liberation, what's the bigger vision? Like, where would you like to be, and how can we all help you get there?
Well, I would love for us to be able to set up chapters around the country. We've actually had inquiries from folks who follow our Facebook page about being able to set up chapters. So that's what we're working on now, trying to put a toolkit together. We will also be doing virtual events, podcasts, as well as in-person events, and probably at some point, rallies and demonstrations, right? Because again, as the 2024 elections heat up, we need to be organized. We need to be knowledgeable about what's going on, and we need to be willing to fight back. Because if many of us already have concerns about what's happening in the public school system, imagine if these people are able to take control of more school board seats around the country, right, and the ideological battles that are going to ensue. And they have the power. They have the power to set policy. They have the power to hold superintendents accountable to a certain level, which is going to trickle to the teachers and the administrations within these different school systems. So even here in Minnesota, just recently, we have had a flare-up over book banning in Bloomington, Minnesota. And so some young folks have actually organized their own group to fight back against book bans that are happening in Bloomington. And now there are parents actually getting involved. So I'm expecting in Minnesota, a place that, many folks think is liberal, to be one of the states that begins to have to grapple with these issues. But because most of us haven't been attuned to what's going on, we're not ready, in my opinion. But we're trying, as Moms for Liberation, we're trying to get the people ready.
So one of the things, Nekima, that's very clear about Moms for Liberty is the financial backing, because obviously to host summits, to do trainings, to get 200 chapters around the country, there are a lot of financial resources that had to go into that. So I'm thinking about groups like Emily's List. I'm thinking about other, organizations, PACs, progressive PACs. Do you see any of those perhaps coming on board with Moms for Liberation, providing that kind of financial support you're going to need to get the message out nationwide, to build chapters throughout the nation, and to just, even fund these trainings that need to take place?
Well, that's what we're working on now. We have been in touch with a variety of philanthropic partners, laying out, all of the things that you and I are talking about during this discussion, and urging them to invest in our work. And as they invest in our work, that's an investment in Black and brown women, women who, are not afraid of controversy and challenges and adversity, but women who boldly take on these issues and who have the heart to fight for what's in our community's best interest. So I think that it's one of the best investments that philanthropy can make. But in the meantime, we're not allowing a lack of funding to stop us from doing what's within our power to do. And that's to educate folks, that's to show up where we need to be, and to create opportunities like the School Board Partners Fellowship that is going on right now.
Yeah, that's so important. And the reason I thought about a group like Emily's List and some of the PACs is because ultimately you are training a new generation of women who will become elected officials. And we know that becoming a school board member for some is just a springboard. It's a springboard to their city council. It could be a springboard to their state legislature. It could be a springboard to Congress, to Senate. I mean, it is the beginning for many of our, most progressive and effective elected officials. So I hope that those groups that fund candidates see this as an opportunity to fund the funnel that is creating candidates. Quickly, Nekima, I want to make sure people can find you. If they want to get involved, they want to donate, they want to volunteer, if they want to partner with you, how can they find you and how can they stay abreast of the progress that Moms for Liberation is making?
Well, I would encourage folks to join our Instagram page. Moms for Liberation, and FOR, is spelled out. That's a great starting point. As they come to the page, they'll see that it's populated with many articles and statistics and other information that they need. They can also find us on our website, which I believe is momsforliberation.com. And we also, they can also follow the work of Wayfinder Foundation as well, which is the larger organization that I run that is focused on Black and Brown women on the front lines and amplifying their voices and their leadership.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, if they want to follow me directly, I'm on Instagram, Nekima Levy Armstrong. And so it's at Nekima L. I'm on Facebook as Nekima Levy Armstrong. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Threads as well. So all of those are places that they can go if they want to stay connected to what is happening.
Thank you so much, Nekima. We are out of time, but this is such an important conversation. I'm so glad I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, going through my Instagram page, and I saw that you had sent me that really incredible feature that was done on you and the organization In Essence magazine. So I'm glad to see that a magazine dedicated to Black women is lifting up your work, because it's important that we get the word out and keep having these conversations, because again, this is so much bigger than a book ban. We wish this were just about banning books, because we could handle that, I think, in short order. But this is a whole movement. This is a whole movement of women who have aligned themselves with the most extreme voices in the conservative GOP party and are on a mission to take us back to a time when America was not great, take us back to a time where African Americans and other marginalized people, don't have access to information, don't have access to the same resources that, white families and white communities have access to, and we have to do everything in our power to fight that. And we can count on you when there is a void to step in and pick up the mantle. And again, just congratulations on your new organization, the work that you're doing. Anything we can do to amplify your message and the message of Moms for Liberation, don't hesitate to reach out. We love you here at KBLA Talk 1580, and we are rooting for all things Black, including Moms for Liberation. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers and the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
This comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on Unapologetically Progressive
Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.